Hey guys, it's Jack. I wanted to let you know that we're starting a new push for subscriptions here on Human Events Daily. So make sure that when you're listening to this podcast, you hit subscribe, you download it, and you share it with 5 of your friends. Make sure they're all going and downloading as well, because we need to get the signal out as much as possible. Look, we've done so much over the past couple of years since this show started, and we're only going to do so much more. Let's get it.
Got many of his people. They voted for me because we are on an economic plan. As far as economics is concerned, we have certain things that aren't that far apart. People are surprised, but many of you, if you'll take a look, many of the people that voted for Bernie Sanders when he was no longer there to vote for, they went to me. I picked up a tremendous amount of his voters.
How much oil have you gotten through the strait with the help of naval escorts? And are you directing U.S. forces to guide those ships through the strait, more tankers through the strait?
A lot. I don't want to say how many, but a lot. A lot of oil is coming into our country, and a lot of oil is coming into the world that people don't even know about. And that's why it's at $97 a barrel instead of $300 a barrel. And when that whole thing is straightened out, it shouldn't take long. One way or the other, it's going to get done. And when it's all straightened out, you're going to have oil prices drop down to maybe even lower than they were. And you've heard me say this. I was in Iowa, and for a gallon of gasoline, it was at $1.85. That was 3.5 months ago.
Last year, the FBI reopened its investigation into the cocaine found in the White House during the Biden administration. Have you been briefed on where that investigation stands?
No, but I might ask about it. I might ask. You mean in the shelves where they found the cocaine, actually? No, I might ask about it. Sorry.
Have you made a decision on the arms sales to Taiwan, that package, the $14 billion?
We're looking at that, yeah.
Are you still planning to talk to Taiwan's president about it?
I'll always talk to him, but we're looking at it.
What was your reaction to John Bolton agreeing to plead guilty in the classified documents?
Well, I was never much of a fan of John Bolton. I never thought he was a smart person. And he was a radical right in terms of war, not in terms of other things. He wanted to go to war with anybody that opened their mouth, anybody that talked. And I used him for a purpose. You know, he was involved with Bush, and he created a lot of problems. But he always wanted to kill people in war. And that was okay for me as long as I didn't listen to him, which I never did. He's a bad guy, John Bolton. He's a dirty guy, and we caught him. We caught him. And, he wrote a book. You look at all the information he took. I mean, if you look at that case, it's a great honor to have helped from the standpoint of encouragement. I looked at John Bolton as somebody that was a very dishonest guy and not a smart guy. And I guess he's paying the price for certainly being dishonest.
You mentioned the Kennedy Center, sir. How do you want to be involved moving forward?
The same way it is. I'm the chairman. So we'll just keep it going. Somebody has to do it. It loses a lot of money. It has for years. It's lost hundreds of millions of dollars for years. And yet it's something you have to keep going. It's the arts. They all lose money. Carnegie Hall. You take a look at all of that kind of thing loses. So they really, everybody, they want me to say very badly. So we're gonna take a look at it.
You also mentioned Fannie Mae and
The judge really hurt the Kennedy Center because he slowed down. We're gonna spend a lot of money on fixing it and making it, bringing it back to health. And the judge really made it very hard to do that. But I'm gonna look at his ruling on that. But we have to bring it back physically. We have to bring it back, and we have to bring it back in other ways. So we'll take a good look at it.
you mentioned Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. With Pulte's move over as now acting DNI, is an IPO off the table?
No, it's not. We're thinking about an IPO for that. It's not a rush, but we've created a I could have sold that for literally less than 10% in my first term. I was offered, a lot of people were offering me money meaning the country, to buy Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, as you know. And it suffered tremendous hardship. And then we built it back. And I could have sold it in my first term for 1/10 of what it's worth now, and I didn't want to do it. now I think we would consider an IPO. Yeah.
And he would potentially see that through.
He's staying there.
So then who are the people you're talking to for DNI? Can you give us some names?
5 different people, all very good, all people that you know very well, all people that do that kind of thing, and they're very respected people.
Mr. President, what do you think about Major League Baseball owners pushing for a salary cap? Do you think it's time for baseball to have a salary cap?
So they sort of have one, don't they?
It's a luxury tax threshold, but the teams that have the money are willing to spend it, like the Dodgers.
You don't have a salary cap, you don't have a sport, because they can't help themselves. In sports, they can't help themselves. Football has a salary cap.
Every major professional league except Major League Baseball in America.
They should have done it a long time ago. I know so much about sports. They should have done it a long time ago. We're trying to help save college sports because they got some rulings that really essentially destroyed college sports. And we're working with Randy Levine and Nick Saban and some great people who are trying to save it because it's so horrible.
What do you think could happen if this NIL just gets completely out of control and nobody checks it?
Well, I think what's going to happen if you don't have what they're trying to do now, that's sort of a cap in a certain way. If you don't have that, you really have a problem. And not only college sports, colleges, where you see where Penn State lost $500 million, where a certain school that I like very much in Florida, they lose $400 or $500 million. You can't have that. Nobody can afford that because they go crazy. That's why when you say Major League Baseball, it's shocking, frankly, that they didn't put a cap on many years ago. They had a chance to do a cap and they blew it.
Sir, on Ukraine, now that Zelensky has proposed a face-to-face meeting with Zelensky, do you still want them to go first before the U.S. gets involved in talks?
Well, I don't mind. I mean, it's, let them deal. I'm the one that got them to this position. And I think that's going to get worked out. I think we're getting close to where Russia, Ukraine should have. It's a war that should have never happened. Would have never happened if I was president. But I think that's going to get worked out.
Will Secretary Rubio take a more active role, or do you expect it still to be Jared and Steve?
They'll be involved. JD, everybody. We'll all be involved. We want to see it done. We're not spending money. They're buying things from us, actually, at full price. With Biden, he gave them everything. Just gave them hundreds of billions of dollars of weapons and everything else. But it's a war that should have never happened, and it's a war that has to be. Last week, 25,000 people over the course of the month, 25,000 people were killed. Russia, Ukraine, 25,000. It's not acceptable.
Mr. President,
Not acceptable. Thank you very much. Have a good time.
sir, thank you.
This is what happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare.
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is king.
President Trump, this was just crossing as we were heading in here. President Zelensky wrote a letter to President Putin. He wants the two of them to meet to hash out the end of the war in Ukraine because he thinks you are too busy with the war in Iran. Is he right?
Well, I don't know. I'm glad that they're maybe talking about meeting. I think we had a lot to do with it. I know exactly what you're doing. But I think it would be great if they met. They should get it done.
Here in Washington, House lawmakers yesterday approved new aid for Ukraine, a sign of growing support. But that support is expected to run into a roadblock in the Senate.
President Trump told reporters Bill Pulte will not be his permanent choice anyway for Director of National Intelligence after appointing him to the role in acting capacity earlier this week.
Senate Republicans defeated a Democratic amendment led by Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer that would have blocked President Trump from creating a fund to compensate political allies. That failed 50-49, despite support from 3 vulnerable Republicans.
This bill, as amended, is passed.
This morning, the Senate narrowly voting to approve a $70 billion immigration enforcement package.
President Trump is sending his own unique message to the heart of the Iranian political system when he was asked whether or not he would meet with Iran's new supreme leader.
I don't want to meet, but if I did meet, I'd be honored to meet him. I'd like to see if we make a deal. As far as Iran's concerned, you're going to find out what the deal is. But the main parts of the deal is they can't have a nuclear weapon. We're going to win on paper, or we're going to win military. One way or the other.
A jury has been chosen to decide the closely watched murder trial of Carmelo Anthony.
More than 500 people were on the list of potential jurors, but the jury will not include anyone who is black, despite this case being racially charged.
Good cracker is a dead cracker. Only good cracker is a dead cracker.
Some commentators are suggesting this is a take the knee for Henry Nowak moment. Would you take the knee for Mr. Nowak?
Well, I think to honour what that
was a yes or no, Mr. Lammy. Would you take the knee for Henry Nowak?
I think no.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily. We're here live on Real America's Voice. Today is June 5th, 2026, Anno Domini. And guys, let's throw that shot back up there because I just want to explain what everyone's looking at. So this is the reflecting pool. President Trump has announced that the reflecting pool is now being filled up. I think it'll take about, someone was telling me, possibly up to a week to fill the entire thing. That's how large it is. But what you're looking right now are the finishing touches being put. The first water is being put into the reflecting pool. Now, I have reached out to the administration to see if it's possible to use the Cove Pure water filter, of course, to fill the entire reflecting pool with Cove Pure water. At this time, they have yet to respond, but we're working very hard behind the scenes on that. But I think it's be really great, and I think it's just going to be a great thing for America's 250th. Now, unfortunately, we're looking at other news right now that isn't so great out of the UK and other parts of the world. And you just saw that video from Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy, and he came out and said that he took a knee for George Floyd, but wouldn't take a knee for Henry Nowak. Today's question of the day, we're going to be getting into this in the final segment here. Is the death of Henry Nowak, the murder of Henry Nowak, going to be a tipping point? I think that it is. I want to reach out, though, to someone. We've been bringing on guests from the UK all week. He and I have been talking about this a lot behind the scenes. He's posted some interesting video commentary as well about it. It's the raw ag nationalist, Dr. Charles Cornish-Dale, joins us once again. Dr. Charles, how are you?
It's great to be back, Jack. Great to be speaking to you. And I'm really glad that you enjoyed my video content today.
Thank you very much for putting your shirt on your body rather than on your head, like in your earlier video. I appreciate that, and the audience does as well.
Yeah, no, well, I did it especially for you, Jack, because I know how much you prefer it.
No, I do. We'll leave that discussion for another time. But look, the video that you saw from your deputy prime minister saying very unequivocally that there is one standard for certain groups of people, but not the same standard for white British people, including the victims of murder, is to me seems quite shocking. I've said that this is the exposure of the anti-whites. And what do I mean by that? I mean that there is a group of people, and by the way, they're not all minorities. Some of them are, in fact, themselves white. Many of them, in fact, are themselves white. But this has become an animating ideology for them in the way that is now being exposed. What do you think of that thesis? And do you think this will be a tipping point, not just for the UK where you live, but also the entire West?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, the Henry Nowak case really, really has been shocking. I mean, the body cam footage that was released is, I mean, it's terrible. It's bad enough reading about what happened. It's bad enough reading the details, reading that Henry Nowak was handcuffed by police while he was bleeding to death after having been stabbed 5 times in what was probably actually a racist attack. By a Sikh man carrying a knife that he was allowed to carry because Sikhs have a religious exemption that allows them to carry knives in the UK. Nobody else is allowed to carry a knife, of course. You're not allowed to carry a knife for self-defense. And if you do, you're likely to go to prison, actually for quite some time. So it was one thing, I think, to read about it, and then quite another thing to see the footage, the body cam footage, this kind of banal, unfolding horror as Henry Nowak begs for his life, tries desperately to convince the police that he has been stabbed, that his life is ebbing away, he can't breathe. You know, the exact phrase that George Floyd used in 2020 that kicked off, you know, the summer of Floyd, the color revolution that took place in the US, and really whose ramifications were felt around the world, certainly around the Western world, with big changes actually, you know, to government and policing policy, including in the UK, including in Hampshire, Southampton, where Henry Nowak died. The local police force created a race action plan where they made a commitment to eliminate all forms of racism from policing and to establish an anti-racist police force. And look, we've seen what that means now. What does it mean for a police force to be anti-racist? It means that they will turn up at the scene of a crime and simply on the basis of an accusation of racism by an ethnic minority, they will disbelieve the evidence of their eyes, a boy on the floor on his face, covered in blood, saying he's been stabbed. They'll disbelieve that evidence. They'll handcuff him and they'll play a role in his, you know, in his death. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's hard not to watch this footage, not to pay attention to this case and think this has to be some kind of turning point. And it's very, very interesting. It's very, very illuminating to watch people like David Lammy, Deputy Prime Minister, member of the Labour Party, one of the two parties, along with the Conservative Party that has done so much, basically everything really, to enshrine anti-racism, DEI, positive discrimination, two-tier policing, two-tier government in British public life. And he can't get away from the fact that there is a two-tier system and that anti-racism is not a universalist creed. It's a particularist creed. It applies to certain people and not to others. And the people it doesn't apply to are the white British majority. And now I think that is very clear. And I think people genuinely are waking up to it. And it's a novel thing. It's a really novel thing in Britain because for decades and decades, I think the interests and the opinions of the white British majority, particularly about mass immigration and the social and political effects of mass immigration, have been disregarded. They've been illegitimate. You haven't been allowed to speak out. You've been subject to censure. People have even been sent to prison. But it does look like things are changing, Jack. I mean, this is such an horrific case, and people are so fed up with the terrible, terrible mess that has been made of Britain by mass immigration, policies of mass immigration over a period of almost 30 years now. So, yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no reason not to believe this is going to be a significant turning point.
No, I couldn't agree more that what we've seen is sparking ramifications and sending shockwaves really across the political system. JD Vance, by the way, has just posted a very long tweet about Henry Nowak. We're seeing, again, even the fact that the UK Deputy Prime Minister is being asked about something like this. The Overton window, as it is, where these issues just 4 or 5 years ago weren't able to be spoken of. Now we even have mainstream media calling deputy prime ministers to account on this. The vice president of the United States is speaking out, also a sort of deputy prime minister in a sense. So, this is really turned the page on all of this. I believe it's a tipping point, and I believe it's something that can get us back to, look, if we're going to have a just society, if we're going to have a righteous society, we ought to be a colorblind society where the same standards are applied to everyone and all, regardless of your characteristics. Right back, Human Events Daily.
Today, they talk about influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, he's done a great job.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec here, back live, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Folks, America's hitting its 250th year and we're fighting for its soul right now. Culture, economy, who gets your dollar? That's the battle. Most wireless companies don't care what you stand for. They just want your cash. Patriot Mobile, so different. For more than 12 years, they've stood with Americans like us, backing the Christian conservative movement when everyone else stayed silent or worse. Here's the deal. You don't have to give up quality or service when you switch to Patriot Mobile. They deliver premium priority access on all 3 major U.S. networks, so you'll get the same coverage or better than you have today. Think switching is a hassle? It isn't. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their 100% U.S.-based customer support team can activate you in minutes. You still paying off a device? Patriot Mobile even offers a contract buyout. This is a defining year. We're in a fight for America's soul. We must work together to save our country. Go to patriotmobile.com/POSO or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code POSO for a free month of service. That's patriotmobile.com/POSO or give them a call, 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today. I want to bring Dr. Charles Cornish-Dale back on here. We're talking more about the shockwaves of the Henry Nowak case. And I also wanted to point out that the United States State Department also put out a tweet earlier today directly targeting the British government. And this, was yesterday after the show. And they said, ideological conditioning and two-tier policing are glaring symptoms of civilizational decline. They must be rejected across the West. The United States sends our condolences to the family of Henry Nowak and the people of the United Kingdom at this troubling time. That's an official release from the Department of State of the U.S. And of course, we remember the response to the George Floyd death. We remember the way that the UK responded. Many foreign governments responded. Many folks on the left responded. And yet you're not seeing this because this is an example of, again, that two-tier policing. So I want to get Dr. Charles, your comment on this, that it seems, as you say, these policies that are erected in the name of anti-racism actually in function only turn out to be anti-white. And in fact, there are racial judgments and racial measurements and racial qualifications that are always employed as long as they are employed against whites. So in actuality, they haven't been anti-racist at all.
No, quite. And I mean, this is a fairly standard point that's actually been hugely controversial for a long period of time, pointing out actually anti-racists are perhaps the most racist people of all. They're certainly as racist as any, sort of boogeyman white supremacist that you might want to point to. But actually that's been beyond the pale. It's been beyond the pale to say, you know what, actually these policies that are supposed to enshrine equality for all and equal justice, actually, you know what, that's not what it's about. It's actually about dispossessing, disenfranchising the white majority, taking revenge upon them, allowing hideous crimes to be perpetrated against them. You only need to look at it in the case of the US at the Community Relations Service, this Department of Justice subunit that was established specifically to cover up anti-white crimes, violent crimes, rapes and murders in particular. A white man is kicked to death by a gang of Somalis in a small town in Maine. There's an obvious racial motive. The CRS jumps into life, comes to the scene, tells the family members, no, you've got to speak out and say this isn't a racist murder. You've got to call for calm. We're going to sort of cover this up. And the perpetrators, they're not going to get a heavy they're not going to get a heavy jail sentence. Anti-racism, yes, is a racist phenomenon. It is a racist morality. It's a racist value system because it privileges certain groups over others on the basis of their skin color. It is that simple, but it's been too controversial to say that for years and years and years. But only now, as we see, the dire effects of demographic change, as the contradictions mount, and it becomes almost impossible now, or it actually does become impossible now to deny that there is a two-tier system, that there is unequal justice in Britain and in other Western countries, then the Overton window has shifted. Popular sentiment has shifted. And it is, like you say, it's an amazing thing, really, for the State Department to put out a tweet like that, for J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, to put out a tweet like that. But I think actually patriots in the UK should be very, very encouraged by these tweets. You actually do have the support of the US government. The US government supports you in your fight against, the negative effects of demographic change, against the liberal authoritarianism that is the handmaiden of demographic change. So, things really are changing, Jack. Things really are changing.
Well, and you hear people again and again say, "Oh, why do we support mass immigration?" It's that not that we like immigrants. It's because we hate Americans or we hate British. That we want the SPLC again used to have a guy in the back office, one of his officials, and he kept metrics of the declining white population percentage of the United States of America. This is my point. They use these fancy and flowery terms as a smokescreen for what it really is that they're driving for, is that they want there to be this two-tier system. And in fact, it's always been a two-tier system rather than the simple colorblind, everyone is held to the same tier system, which is how we used to run things in the West. And oh, by the way, how Western civilization came to be the greatest civilization on the face of the earth. Last minute to you, Dr. Charles.
Yeah, well, quite. Well, I think that would be a true anti-racist system, wouldn't it? That is the anti-racist system. The colorblind meritocracy, where people succeed on the basis of their character and their abilities, rather than receiving, a helping hand from the state, prejudicial laws, two-tier policing, that actually force the white majority into a position of second-class citizens in their own nation. And as you say, I think the best thing that can be done is to return to that system. And certainly, at least in the UK, you have Reform, Nigel Farage, you have other right-wing parties, Restore, and that's exactly what they want to do.
The movement is growing.
Fingers crossed it will happen.
And growing. Dr. Charles, what again is your Twitter handle for folks?
My Twitter handle is BabyGravy9. I am the Raw Egg Nationalist on Twitter.
My goodness. Go give him a follow, folks, if you dare. We'll be right back.
Jack, where's Jack? Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. We have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec, we are back live. Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Folks, Father's Day, we know, is coming up. It's going to be fast, and it's coming fast. June 21st. Give your dad the gift of a great night's sleep. Pay him back for all those sleepless nights. GhostBed is family-owned and operated. It's got 3 generations of doing business in the United States. This thing is made in America. Look, you love your dad loved you. Now it's time to pay him back. And by the way, I am told that when I got my dad the GhostBed, it has reduced his snoring by 50%. That's an anecdote. I don't have studies that back that up, but that's an anecdote that has reduced my father's snoring. Nothing will ever reduce it 100%. Let's not play games, but reduced it by 50%. And that not only is a blessing for my mother, my dear mother, but also for the public at large. So, folks, if you want your dad's snoring to be cut by 50%, check it out. It might work for you the same way. Also, right now, you can get up to 101 nights to try the GhostBed at home. If you don't feel the difference, you can send it back risk-free right now. GhostBed is offering my audience the lowest prices of the season, plus an extra 10% off. How do you get it? You go to ghostbed.com/Poso and use that promo code Poso. That's ghostbed.com/Poso and use the powerful promo code Poso. Again, ghostbed.com/Poso. All right, very excited now, because there was so much going on. Pope Leo, the president, the back and forth. Folks, remember when I was at the White House, asked the question of the president at the time when all this was happening. We've got Michael Hitchborn on here. He's the president and founder of the Lepanto Institute, and he's just written a very long article about all of this. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's good to have you back. Walk us through when you were digging into some of this and sort of some of the things that you've put together regarding possibly and more than likely what the president was responding to.
So what we found is that in 2025, Pope Leo had he had a private audience with members of what was called the World Meeting of Popular Movements. This was the fifth of these meetings that took place under the auspices of the Vatican since 2014. Pope Francis was in charge for 4 of them, and Pope Leo, for the first time, was in charge of this one. And the thing is, the World Meeting of Popular Movements, it's a gathering of actual communist organizations. They call themselves popular movements, but really they are Karl Marx praising communists. And they get together, they start talking about, well, how can we collaborate with the church? How can we work with local governments to try and expand our design or desires for the way civilization ought to be? And Pope Leo, in his private audience with this group, which was held in the Vatican, the meetings were held off-site, but in his meetings with in his private audience with this group, he called them social poets. He called them champions of virtue and champions of justice and champions of humanity. And they are none of these things. These are actual communists, and they're promoting abortion. They're promoting LGBT stuff. So that's in a nutshell what we discovered.
So you're looking at these things that are being promoted, and we see the president coming out and by the way, I'm somebody who I'm a Catholic. I consider myself a traditional Catholic in the sense of a cradle Catholic, and not in the sort of online I'm a trad cath kind of sense, but no, I mean in the fact that I raise my children to be Catholic, that we say grace before meals, that we say the rosary together, that we go to church every week. This is our life. This is our lifestyle. And we're Polish, so we pretty much only come in one flavor when it comes to that. But it's what we've been doing as a family and as a faith tradition for over 1,000 years. And when you look at some of these things that the current pope is pushing, they don't seem to be in line with those traditions.
No, they certainly don't. I mean, the whole World Meeting of Popular Movements was put together under the Dicastery for Integral Human Development. And one of the things people have to understand, this isn't something that was incidentally kind of tossed together and then presented to the new pope, because just shortly before the World Meeting of Popular Movements, he published his very first apostolic letter. It's called an apostolic exhortation, and the title of it was De Lexite. And it's supposed to be on love and service to the poor and that kind of stuff. But he dedicated 2 paragraphs of this document to popular movements. And he even acknowledged that there were certain problems with these groups. He said, there have been and still are various popular movements made up of lay people and led by popular leaders who have been viewed with suspicion and even persecuted. Okay, I've got to put this in context, because they've been viewed with suspicion because they are actual communists. We have video of them reciting the Communist Manifesto. We have them marching through the streets with hammer and sickle flags. Okay, this is not like your pot-smoking garden variety college student. This is a real communist entity. So he says they've been viewed with suspicion. Well, that's why. And he says, and they've even been persecuted. Well, there's no persecution when it comes to criminal enterprises like these communist groups. So for him to say such things about these organizations kind of gives I don't know if he wrote that part of the encyclical himself, but it certainly doesn't look good. And for him to say the things, calling them social poets, calling them champions of humanity at his private audience, gives kind of an insight into what he thinks about these popular movements. And it's not a good thing. But we're seeing consistently that there is a Marxist infiltration at deep levels within the Vatican. And for Donald Trump to recognize this and to acknowledge this when he was going back and forth with some of the stuff going on with Pope Leo, and he said he's surrounded by Marxists, he's right, because he is surrounded by Marxists.
And this is a huge issue, because look, I was there when Pope Leo, the conclave, where he was chosen. I was there in Vatican Square when Vatican City and St. Peter's Square when the white smoke came out for for Pope Leo. And of course, just mentioned before, as a guy of Polish descent, we've all been hoping for another John Paul II who was an ardent and strident anti-communist. Fulton Sheen, who is on his way to canonization, he'll have his beatification later this year, and then on his way to canonization, was a strident anti-communist. And so it's confusing for the laity, at the very minimum, to see people like this invited to the halls of the Vatican.
It is confusing. What else is confusing is that the final declaration of this thing, they actually came out with, they handed Pope Leo their final declaration. It was something that they wrote together. They gave it to him. And in their declaration, you have to remember, these are organizations that are not just communists. They're also extremely pro-abortion. They're pushing the trans ideologies. In their final declaration, they wrote, "We also demand the universal right to health and medical care as an indispensable condition for a dignified life." Well, when you consider who these organizations are, you know what they mean by universal right to health and medical care. They're talking about abortion, contraception. They're talking about transgender care, whatever that means. They also, in their final declaration, said that they are calling for a universal basic income. They demanded a universal basic income as recognition of unpaid work and a guarantee of subsistence. Well, what that means is they want a redistribution of wealth, and they want it on such a scale that you don't have to work in order to receive an income. You can just sit there and sit on your duff and stay at home and play video games, and you'll receive a basic income that's going to pay for your house, pay for your food, pay for gas or whatever. This is socialism. The whole thing was socialists talking about how to implement socialism. And the thing about this particular meeting, and this is why it's so dangerous, not just to the church, but to society at large. For the very first time, the World Meeting of Popular Movements, they collaborated with local church entities who accompanied them to the meeting in Rome. And when they got together, the whole idea was this is part of synodality, and they want them to start collaborating on the local level in their local churches. All that's going to do, and my grandmother used to say, if you're going to play in the mud with white gloves on, the mud doesn't become glovey. In other words, you're going to sit, you're going to play with the communists, and all you're going to do is wind up spreading communism within the Catholic Church. And then,
yes, indeed, and something I was actually reflecting on just this past weekend, I was going over the 10 Commandments with my kids, and what are the last two commandments are about covetousness. All right, socialism and communism are incompatible with the 10 Commandments themselves. Michael Hitchborn, thank you so much for coming on, for writing this article. We're going to share this with all our partners. Where can people go to get access to it?
If you go to our website, lepantoin.org, it's right there, lepantoin.org. You can follow us on X, where we are at lepantoinst, INST.
All right, go give them a follow, folks. We'll be right back next segment when, remember, on Fridays, you are the guest.
This is the Jack Posobiec Appreciation Hour. I can say confidently, I think Josh Shapiro would be the vice presidential nominee if it wasn't for Jack Posobiec. And that is, I'm being honest.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. As you know, here on Fridays, we offered you and we promised you the final segment is always yours. You are the guest. And today's question of the day: will the murder of Henry Nowak be a tipping point? Our email is always 1776@humanevents.com, 1776@humanevents.com. We've got a number of emails in. This one in from Elizabeth in Florida. Hi, Jack. I do think this is the tipping point. Believe it or not, there was a time back in the early 2000s where people were very proud of their English heritage and history. I think seeing an innocent man murdered because he's white, then watching an innocent murder victim handcuffed while he lays dying of an unprovoked stabbing attack has woken up the sleeping giant. Tommy Robinson is no longer considered far right. The advancement of the Reform Party and information that came out about the grooming rape gangs coming out recently, people have had it. No, I couldn't agree more. This one in from Janet. Yes, it's already a tipping point, a horrendous, savage crime. The British police attitude against white men is so obvious. This one is in from Kitty. And okay, she says, go ahead and use my first name. And she says she's a proud American. She says she doesn't think that it will be a tipping point. It should be a tipping point, and absolutely a gazillion incidents ago should have been. But after seeing what people are willing to tolerate during the China virus, left me feeling that there is no rise up and fight left in our DNA, meaning USA and other countries, and it terrifies me. I'd love to see people in these countries start denouncing these commie, soulless unhumans. But people's instinct to survive the moment seems to negate the instinct to fight for a better tomorrow. The unhumans have infiltrated every aspect of most countries' institutions, agencies, systems, which makes the collective monster seem unbeatable. Good must defeat evil, though. I certainly agree with that, and I agree it will. And hopefully us doing it chip by chip will make enough headway to do just that in the long run. So in summary, no tipping point will be achieved, but all hope isn't lost either. Well, I see what you're saying, but I would submit this, that there are moments that become tipping points. George Floyd was a tipping point in many ways in 2020. It really was. It was a watershed moment. But at the same time, I think, today, for example, is actually the 14th anniversary of Turning Point USA. And when Charlie started Turning Point 14 years ago, 2012, he didn't know that it would turn into this massive organization. He didn't know that there would be a Donald Trump, that there would be three houses of government, the president, the House, and the Senate, that would turn over so many governor's races. You can go look at the Democrat autopsy the other day. We were talking about that with Jonathan Alpert, that it would be so successful, because in that moment, it looked like the Democrats had won anything. And I remember Democrats saying that the Republicans would be relegated to a regional party back then. But Charlie said no. He said, I think there's going to be a chance to push forward. And he saw that. He had the vision. And look where we are today. So I agree with you that it doesn't mean it's going to, the fight's going to be over, that it's total victory. Absolutely, obviously. But I would also say that when you look at it from the perspective of where we were in 2012 as a country, as a movement, as a people, to where we are today, things are getting better. Is there friction? Yes. But change always comes with friction, right? That's required. You will not have or achieve any meaningful change in your personal life, in your business life, in your scholastic life, if you're in school, or your relationships, your romantic life. You won't have any change without those friction points. And I get what you're saying about how people just want to get through the moment. I totally get that. Because we all feel that, right? Oh, it'd be easier to just kind of let bygones be bygones. It'd be easier not to say anything, not be confrontational. I'm from the Philly area, so we don't have that, but I get it, right? I do understand that other people have that, and we've gotten too complacent, too comfortable, too fat and happy, and then you see something like this on the news, and you think, hey, wait a minute, that could be my kid. That could be any of our kids. We can't have a two-tier system anymore. And we certainly can't have a two-tier system based on, number one, political or elitism, which we've talked about in the U.S., but also we can't have two tiers when it comes to race either. One set of laws for white people and one set for everyone else. No, doesn't work. It's not going to work. And in fact, that would tear this country apart. It would tear any country apart. Can't have it. Great comment, though. Great. This one come in from Paisano. He's saying that, look, the British police they're going to work every day, and they have to remember that they're on video, and this is going to happen. And that means a tipping point will have been reached. Otherwise, the Brits will still be arrested and jailed for social media posts. This one in from Chuck Finley. He says no. He says he thinks that the Brits will forget about this as soon as it comes in, as soon as it's tea time or time to head to the pub, while they keep killing, and unfortunately, the rape gangs keep raping. I don't know if I agree with that. I think this is going to be remembered. Something about this one from Oh Right Mate. they're going to bring in digital ID so British people who express any opinions online can be arrested or jailed. There's no ability for it to be a tipping point when speaking out will result in prison. And that's a true statement. That's a very true statement. We do have to watch out for that, of course. Let's see, what else do we have here? Dr. Chloe Carmichael actually writes in, great guest. Let's see if we can get her on next week. She says, the healthy function of anger is to strengthen boundaries. Amazing. Just absolutely amazing. This one in from @Second Amendment. He actually has the account @Second Amendment. I have great handle. It should be, but I fear the UK is too far gone. I hope they prove me wrong. Mr. Maga Miguel, the UK is tipping. Nowak is positive. It's unfortunate, but necessary. I hope I'm right. The UK can't fall more. Eric, retired United States Marine Corps, not a former Marine because there's no such thing as a former Marine. If multiple assassinations were not, there may never be a point of return for liberals. Too far gone. Well, that's an interesting point. Mike Brown, 2 events, post-Charlie, Henry the number 1, the Anthony verdict, convicted. If he's convicted, we will see black people blow up. If he's let off, white people will blow up. Something needs to change. Both countries are on the verge of revolution. I don't care for Chud. He should be able to bond out. It feels like we have a 2-tier system. And this is kind of what I'm getting at, right? This is what I'm getting at is that you look at the Carmelo Anthony. I know I haven't talked about it a ton on air here. And everyone wants to read that as a racial incident. Oh, it's a black guy stabbed a white kid. So obviously on the face of it, sure, it's racial. But when it comes to the law, the law should be applied equally, right? Who was the provoker? Who was the instigator? Was it self-defense? Was it not self-defense? And the same standards and the same rules and the same adjudications that we applied to the Kyle Rittenhouse situation should also apply here. And interestingly enough, it turns out that people don't even remember this, that Jacob Blake Jr. was the black man who came at officers with a knife in Kenosha, and that led to the Kenosha riots, which led to Kyle Rittenhouse being forced to defend himself against those rioters. They were marauders who came largely from Chicago, and he defended himself using lethal violence. Now, we defended his actions here, and we walked through the video and showed how in each case he was in grave danger of mortal threat to his life imminently. Whether it was Gage Grosskreutz, whether it was Anthony Huber, okay? And the fact of the matter remains, everyone in that situation was white, and yet they tried to tell you that it was racialized. And Jacob Blake's father is outside of the Carmelo Anthony trial, screaming and trying to make it racial. The point is, folks, this stuff will tear us all apart if we don't get a hold of it. So I'm going to say something right here that I haven't said publicly anywhere yet. I'm going to make an official announcement at some point, but I'll say this here on the show for those watching. I'm going to the UK. I'm going there, and I'm going to add my voice to this fight. Because the Henry Nowak case is the time to make the stand. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission. Play ashore.